Hello and welcome to the 49th episode of When I Was Your Age, a podcast celebrating the careers, callings, and creativity of some friends of mine. I'm your host, Roland Parker, and as always, it's a joy, a pleasure, and a treat to have you here. Today's guest is Nora Hill. I'm really excited to talk with her about her career working in camps. It's a background that I myself have kind of had, but I love seeing what she's been doing in the space now for a while. Make sure that you follow the podcast on Instagram. That's one of the best ways to keep up with what we've been into. If you're here for the first time, make sure that you give us a follow there. But you can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and YouTube. You can find all of those places in the link tree in the Instagram bio, so you can get to wherever you need to be. And that's about it, really. I think we'll go ahead and bring Nora into the stream. Nora, how's it going with you? What you been up to?
Pretty good. I just moved last month, so it's been a crazy few weeks settling into our new spot, but it's pretty good.
Amazing. So where did you move to, and where were you guys before?
My wife and I were living in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, which is like the bottom corner of Massachusetts for the last year and a half, 2 years, and we just moved to New London, Connecticut, which is on the coast, and we're living on the campus of Connecticut College.
Very cool. That's awesome. My brother, he has been living and working as like a residential director at the college that he went to, and then so like that kind of life of living on campus, but not being a student like that. That's been something that I've kind of gotten exposed to from him. But it's a cool thing. Well, it's something that we talked about before we started recording was March Madness and brackets. You said you didn't make a basketball bracket, but you did find another bracket to participate in. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I have a March Mammal Madness bracket, which is something Arizona State University, their like wildlife ecology department puts together every year, and like tons of like high school science teachers and like just people who are like animals all over the country participate. I started doing it a couple of years ago when one of my outdoor ed colleagues like introduced our whole house to it, and we all still do it. Like we have a text thread between a bunch of us where we're all dropping our brackets. So they put together a list of 64 animals that are then like matched up against each other in these dramatic imaginary fights. And you pick which animal you think is the best at surviving, just
Amazing.
generally.
Yeah. So do you have like a champion, like the one you think will end up at the top, like at the end of the tournament?
I've got the spotted-necked otter going all the
Oh,
way.
yeah.
Um,
Great
so
year for the spotted necked otter. I wouldn't be surprised. I think they've got all the pieces to make it happen, make a deep run, but we'll just have to see if they can put it together.
yeah.
Well, we love that. Yeah. One of my favorite genres of I think this is something that I've seen a lot is um like people our age making the same kind of joke. Like it's very like formulaic in how you respond to something, and it's like you'll see the same comment and it'll show up on whatever like video or what have you. But one that I see a lot is like, how do I bet on this? Is one that I've seen a lot, and that was one of the first things that came into my head when you said
Yeah.
when you said
How do
this
I
about
bet on authors?
how do I get in on this action? Who do I need to Venmo? That's a funny kind of feeling. Well, if you want to know more about Nora's mammal selections, or you want to keep up with her, make sure that you follow her on Instagram. We've added that username in the stream, and we'll have it in the show notes as well. Nora, did you ever have any other like long-standing usernames or handles, or embarrassing or funny ones?
I did for a long time, like most of high school. My username on most things was Honora Borealis, like Aurora Borealis, but with my name in the middle.
Excellent.
And I think that my Tumblr is probably still out there on the internet somewhere under that username.
That's perfect. A big one for us that we've been talking about in the last couple episodes is like what was your handle or your username for like Webkins or like Club Penguin. But I like a Nora Borealis. It's always good when you can work in your name in a
Yeah.
good wordplay like that. I like it a lot. Well, Nora, I've got some get to know you questions. Says I know you pretty well, but I want to help our audience to get an understanding of what you're about first. So we'll dive into those. Where are you from, and where do you currently live?
I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, actually within the city of Boston, which I always feel like I have to clarify because so many people say they're from Boston and they're not. But I grew up in the city, and I now live, as we talked about already, in New London, Connecticut, um, because my wife works at Connecticut College now, which is yeah definitely kind of weird living on a college campus when I am not a college student and I don't work there.
Mhm, yeah, that's great. I always kind of think of Atlanta is the big one for us of like people that you run into where like it's such a big metropolitan area that like people just throw it out and they like don't expect you to know of like oh like where at specifically because there's like whole suburbs that like aren't even really Atlanta that you could describe to that so that lots of like street cred I would assume with being like no I grew up
Yeah,
in Boston, and I mean it, and I'm not just saying the immediate suburbs surrounding. I grew up in Boston for real, for real.
yeah.
What do you do?
I I have 2 jobs, basically. I, for most of the year, work for an organization called Outdoor Classroom, that runs a bunch of residential outdoor education sites around New England. So my job is, managing our curriculum and, like, constantly evaluating it and getting feedback from teachers and from the students who come to us, and then trying to make our curriculum better and bigger. And then in the summer, and also I do a lot of off-season work for it. I'm the director of a summer camp in Western Massachusetts called Camp How.
Amazing. Yeah, and something that we can relate to each other a lot on just like kind of growing up in camps and spending a lot of time working there. So I'm excited to talk about that more. How old are you?
I'm 29.
Excellent. What piece of media are you currently diving into or enjoying? So, book, podcast, music, TV show. What's kind of occupying your free time in that way?
My wife Kate and I have been watching through Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, the spinoff, which both of which I watched as a like middle school teenager. I've watched through multiple times, but she never had. So we're watching together. And it's a lot of fun to watch something that I really love with her.
Yeah. So, do you when you're watching it with Kate, are you like kind of nudging and be like, "This is important. This is you need to pay attention here." Yeah, it's
Yeah, and there's a couple plot twists that, like, I was like, "Oh, I know that this is gonna happen soon, but I can't remember exactly when it happens," and that happens, and she's like, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" I'm like, "I didn't know. I
well,
thought we had 2 more episodes."
I wanted you to experience it raw. Yeah, it's fun to be a kind of a guide for someone who's experiencing something new like that, especially when it's a like a beloved like piece of work like for you and to kind of watch it through their eyes that's especially fun. And we just so we're clear too, if this sounds a little bit familiar, I'm pretty sure this is what Kate mentioned on her
I
episode.
think it might
So
have been.
if you listen to Kate's episode and you're kind of drawing you're kind of drawing some conclusions here. Will tie it up neatly in a bow. Yes, Kate and Nora are married to each other, and that is one of our main connections. I did get a little bit ahead of myself because that's usually the last question that I ask. So, spoiler alert: Kate and Nora they're married to each other. What is something that you'd consider a luxurious necessity?
Um, I know from listening to the podcast that you and I have the same answer, which is good coffee. Like,
Yeah,
I've been known to travel with my French press and like my own coffee beans because I I
there
need a
you go.
good cup of coffee.
That's good. My friend who's a bit of a beanhead, if you will. He was sharing with me like a personal like espresso machine, like stovetop, like some kind of like a mocha pot, but um I guess the grinding system is like built up like within it. So you take you're taking your beans and like the grinding and heating element are all built up out together, and it like I cannot say like what the brand was or even really describe very accurately the mechanism, but it seemed like a cool thing if you're doing a lot of traveling and you wanted to have like some espresso um, and stuff like that. So that that was kind of a fun thing to think about. But yeah, I'm totally with you on. I have a minimum threshold of like quality of coffee I'm
Yeah.
willing to tolerate. Um, do you have any bits that you're doing?
Um, I think Kate and I have a lot of bits around our dog, Billy. Like we'll have conversations where one of us is voicing Billy, and one recurring bit is that he's a fundamentalist Mormon, um, which we started when we both were reading this book about like the history of fundamentalist Mormons, which was really fascinating. And he like chewed on it a bit one day, and then we decided that he had absorbed the knowledge from chewing on the book and decided to become a fundamentalist Mormon.
Yeah, he's also a really big fan of the soda shops with like the dirty sodas and like going to get one instead of instead of coffee and
We
stuff like that.
we were at Sonic a couple weeks ago, and Kate got a dirty soda because she felt like she needed to try it.
Mhm.
I did not feel a need to try it.
Yeah, for me, I can kind of understand it. I don't think it's like a conclusion I would come to by myself, but if someone like offered it to me, I would be like, okay, sure, I'll try it out. I mean, like I like a root beer float, but I've never ordered a root in my adult life. I've not ordered a root beer float at any establishment that I've been to.
Maybe you should.
No, maybe I ought to. I do remember one time my roommate in college. It was one of the most inebriated I've ever seen a person, and we were sure the next day he was going to be super bent out of shape. And he went to Buffalo Wild Wings and like ordered off menu a root beer float. And everyone's like, dude, there's no way that this is gonna treat you right. And he was just like, fine. Everyone was like,
It's
so
the secret.
we're like, what have you done to yourself that like this was something that brought you to life? Just a funny experience. We'll have to get him on the podcast sometime. Um, and this next question is fun because it's got a collaborative element to it. Is if you were to replace our national anthem with any song on your playlist, what song would that be? And tell me a little bit about that.
I've been thinking about this one because I knew you would ask. I
Nice.
think True Blue by Lucy Dacus,
Oh,
who's one of my favorite musicians, and it's like it is a song about America, that like I think captures some of America's failings while still loving America.
can you say the artist name one more time? So just so I don't
Lucy
miss it.
Dacus, Dacus is her last name.
Nice.
Oh wait,
Well,
no, I might have the song name wrong. Let me double check.
one thing we'll make sure to do is get Nora's song added to the playlist so that you guys can go see it. But I'm pulling it up now. And you can go listen to all of the submissions. We've added them to a playlist, so you can listen to Nora's song, you can listen to Kate's song, you can listen to everybody else that's been on the show. They've added at least one song there. So it's continuing to grow as we put out more episodes. So super fun thing there. All right, did we find what it was?
Okay, I had the wrong title. Forever Half-Mast
Forever
is
Half
the
Mast.
title.
All right,
Yeah.
we're gonna search it up, and I'm gonna do it now so that I don't forget. Nice, we got it. Excellent. So if you want to hear Lucy Dacus singing Forever Half Mast, you can find that out in the Weewa Eagle Screech onomatopoeia with the emojis written out on there. It's linked in the Instagram bio, so you can go find that pretty easily there. Awesome. And then last question, we've already spoiled it, but how do we know each other?
We know each other through my wife, Kate. I was thinking about like what was when did I first learn that you existed? And I remember pretty early in me and Kate's relationship, like glancing over at her phone and seeing that she had a Snapchat in the Snap group Grill Gals, which is like the two of you and your wife and Jackie, who's also been on the podcast. And she's like, yeah, that's my college friends. That's Grill Gals. But then, over the years, when we make it down to Tennessee and Alabama, I've gotten to spend a lot of time with you guys.
Yeah, wow. Girl Gals is really kind of flooding in a lot of things for me, but yeah, it was really great. We had Kate and Nora and Billy stay with us one time. We look forward to having them some more, hopefully soon. But yeah, that's just a fun group. I would think. Well, let's get into your story. So how far back could you draw this line? Like what was your first experience in I guess the outdoor education kind of thing? Did you have like a class trip that you took like in elementary school? I know that's a pretty common experience, but what was that for you that kind of set you in this direction?
I mean, I think you could argue that it goes back to like when I was a toddler and my mom took me on my first camping trip. That was like a huge part of my childhood. Was every summer, like my mom and my aunt and my mom's best friend would take all of us kids camping together, and like really just built time in the outdoors and loving the outdoors into like who we were as people. And then the summer after fifth grade was when I went to summer camp for the first time, at the camp where I'm now the director. I have been just going back to the same place since I was 11 years old. And, my older brother had never really gone to overnight camp like that. It was just never something he was interested in. But one of my friends from school was like, hey, you got to come to camp with me this summer. And like something clicked pretty immediately for me. And I feel like most of my life since then has been figuring out how to keep going back to camp.
Yeah, I have felt the same. I remember kind of distinctly the first moment that I had entertained like working there in the summer. Like I don't know how old you had to be to like work at camp for the first time, but for me it was like 14 or 15. And then like spending my summer there doing that, I was like, oh wow, this is the best. I'm so like in love with like doing all of this. Like obviously I'd been there as a camper, but like kind of making that magic happen for kids, like the things that I had experienced was really great. Well, tell me about your transition from being a camper to working on staff, because that's got to be a pretty interesting time in your life. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so my camp, when you were 15 or 16, you could be a counselor in training. So I did that, and like me and my whole group of camp friends were CITs together for 2 summers. And then like a whole bunch of us were all then on staff together for the first time the summer I was 18. And that was like the summer I had just graduated from high school and was about to go off to college, and like was just, I think, exactly what you said, that transition to like making that magic happen for the next generation of campers was so cool. And then it's been like really special as I've continued working there at the same place for so many years now to like see other people through that transition. Like there are people on staff now who were my campers in my cabin like that first summer that I was a counselor. And just like that cycle of this really great community being shaped by people over and over. It's
Mhm.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is really special. Well, tell me about, you mentioned kind of the friends that you grew up going to camp with that also kinda came up with you, from like a staffing, perspective. For me, I kinda had, like, my cohort of people that I, like, kinda sorta knew from being a camper. But then it was really solidified and kinda galvanized, like, when I was working on staff with them, and as we got older through that, it's really formative. But tell me about that for you. Did you have friends like that where when you were going up and learning how to be responsible and all that kinda stuff, you were just kind of really solidifying yourself in each other's lives?
Yeah, like definitely there. I think a lot of my closest friends just in life in general are camp friends. Um, I have two really close friends who we all were campers together, and then we were counselors in training together, and then like those first couple of years on staff together. And we now all three of us like live in very different parts of the country and like do completely different things. But one of the kind of like constants in life is that every year, right around Thanksgiving, when they're both back in New England, the three of us like get together and have dinner. And it's, kind of there's a tweet I've seen that's like, I have no idea what my best friend does, but I know that they're great at it. Like that's exactly the relationship we have of, we get together once or twice a year and I could not describe their jobs in any great detail to you, but it's just like this immediate closeness whenever we're together, that I think comes from just going through this really formative experience in life together and like learning how to be adults together in a
Oh
lot of
my
ways.
gosh, yeah. It's so special. It's really hard to describe it. Um, it's those people really, for me, have, like, a special part of who I am, like, they were learning about me as I was learning about myself, and it was so cool to kinda seeing them blossom, like, alongside, like, when it was happening for me, and I'm sure that, people have similar experiences across all different kinds of places and environments, but that is the thing that's, like, resonated with me, like, so heavily. It's had such a long-term impact on who I am, um, but yeah, it's cool to, like, spot, like a camp person and be like, "Oh, so or
Yeah.
that, like, these things. You've had to plunge a toilet at 3 AM," like, kind of thing, so that's kinda fun. Well, tell me that and, about this too, because this is something that I experienced was you get to a certain point where a lot of your cohort, the people that you grew up going to camp with and worked with when you were younger, they start to not come back in the summer as much, and you're sticking around. Tell me about that. Was that hard to handle?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I've been working at camp for 11 years now, so I feel like I've gone through a couple waves of like different people that I was really close with and still am close with leaving camp and moving on to different things. And I remember like so my third summer working at camp was the first year that none of the other people that I had been a CIT with were there. And I remember feeling really sad for parts of that summer and like, is it still gonna be good? Like going in, I was like, is it gonna be good? Am I gonna have a good time? Because my people that I've relied on and like had so much fun with, but also turn to in the moments where I'm really struggling aren't gonna be there. And of course, it was still a lot of fun. And like one thing camp is really great at, as you know, is building relationships. And so I've gotten to like build new relationships and build new friendships every summer that I'm at camp. Um, And I definitely, find myself watching younger staff go through that now and wanting to tell them, like, it's gonna be okay. I know that your best friend from last summer isn't here, but you're still gonna have a good summer.
Mm, yeah, amazing. It that's definitely something that I wish that I I had known I was going to struggle with, and wish that I had had someone like you in that moment to kinda, like, kinda refocus me. Because like, at the end of the summer, I knew like, it was like, "Okay, like, I know that this is good and that everything's, gonna work itself out in that way." But tell me about what were some things that you found that you were good at in interacting with kids, or keeping yourself organized, or programming, what have you, and what were the things that you had to like really work at and like didn't see a lot of progress on, as a program director or a or staffer, or whatever the title is, like what were the things that like took a little bit longer, for you to blossom in?
Yeah. I think, like, I have always been, and like, especially when I started working at camp and started working with kids, it became very clear that I am just like a really patient person and really good at listening and connecting with people, and helping people feel supported. And I have never been good. I've gotten better, but still like does not come naturally to me at like being in front of a crowd and being the like loud, enthusiastic, engaging voice. And that's definitely something that I felt a lot at different points in my career have felt kind of imposter syndrome about, because like the classic camp counselor, camp director is like big and loud and goofy, and that is just not my personality at all. So I've had to kind of work out and have had some great mentors in this, and people I've worked with, just work out like how to be engaging and in front of a crowd in a way that feels authentic to me, and where I'm not faking it, but I'm gonna be in my own version of that.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's really great that you say that. It, had similar kind of experience, and I remember you've probably done a version of this, but do you know like the echoes skit? It's usually like a campfire thing that that getting people to shout things out, and you have staff like split kind of all over, and they're saying the word that the person who's presenting. I was kind of thrust into this like my second year, and I like thought of it as thought of it as something that was especially reserved for this person who'd been doing it for as long as I could remember. And so like stepping into that kind of that kind of role, I was like, I don't know if I have like the stage presence for to like make this happen. But it's something that I will always kind of think of myself as being able to do now. But I didn't start out that way.
Yeah.
And it was a cool thing to kind of from the outside of myself almost like watch myself grow in. Well, tell me about your current role, just like day to day. What are the responsibilities? What are the buckets that you're handling? And tell me about, I think after that, um, how did you how did you kind of come to grips with the fact that you were going to be working at camp in this capacity rather than the things that you'd been doing before?
Yeah, so as our camp director, I like during the summer day to day, like I'm the boss. I run everything on camp during the summer. We have an executive director who um, is like the big boss, and she handles a lot more of the kind of behind the scenes. She does payroll. She like makes sure we have all our permits and deals with, the food company and pays our bills and all that stuff. But she is not always on site during the summer, so I'm really the one running things day to day, which looks like a lot of different things, as I'm sure you can imagine from your time at camp. So it's um, training staff at the beginning of the summer, working with the leadership team to like help them learn how to be supervisors and how to manage staff, overseeing all of the like scheduling and who's assigned to what cabin, and stepping in when there's larger behavioral issues or like big camper conflicts. A lot of the times where like someone has to call home, it's me calling and talking to the parents. If we have a staff member who's really not doing their job well, or who breaks one of the big rules, I'm the one who has to come in and talk to them about that. And definitely something, as I kind of moved up through the ranks, like I was a counselor for several summers, and then I was a unit head, and then I was running our CIT program for a couple of summers. And then I was the assistant director for a couple of summers, and kind of all through that. And especially once I hit the point where I was like, okay, like I want to be a director next summer. Like this is the role I want to be in. Something that was hard to come to terms with was that like in each of those steps, I was getting less time with kids, which is like what I love about camp. I love what camp does for kids, and I love getting to just hang out with kids. And so something I try to be really intentional about is like building in time to just hang out with kids who haven't done anything wrong and aren't really struggling at camp, like because those are the kids I see the most of, just like going and playing with a cabin of kids during the day is a really important thing for me to do.
Yeah, definitely. You gotta step into whatever the game is. You gotta make some time to go make it happen, be a part of the silliness and fun. And but it can be tough when like that's happening, like the free play and whatever, when you're needing to go like switch a bunch of laundry over or like set up the field game or something like that. So but yeah, no, I totally feel that there. Was there an aspect of that specifically, like with your current responsibilities, that you had to pause, maybe ask for some advice from a mentor, or just do some learning and growing? Because it's different capacity, different
Yeah.
way of relating to the staff, different way of relating to campers, like you mentioned. But what was something that you had to work on a little bit?
I think like the two biggest things that I have had to work on and am still learning is like shifting from like how do I be a great support for campers as a counselor to how can I be a great supervisor for young adults. And it's it's a very different relationship. I think being someone's supervisor at camp is very different from being their supervisor in like an office job somewhere, because it is this really close community. And I have a lot of staff working for me who were my campers once, so there's that
I was gonna
pre-existing
say,
relationship. But yeah, like learning how to give the support they need to be the best they can be for camp. And kind of related to that, like learning how to make decisions with like the good of camp as a whole in mind. Because when you're a counselor, like you're focused on, I've got these 10 kids and my job is to make the decisions that will like keep these 10 kids safe and give them a great time and meet all their needs. But I've got this director, I've got like 120 kids and 45 staff, and like the reputation of camp and all the parents who are going to call me if something goes
yeah,
wrong. And like our relationships with all of our campers and staff to consider. So that was a big shift, and something that our executive director, who's been a mentor for me throughout my time at camp, has really helped me, is that process of thinking through, okay, like what's the right thing for camp here,
yeah.
even if it doesn't feel like the right thing for one individual.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Kinda in tune with that. And if you feel free to plead the fifth on this, but were there things that, like, you felt like weren't a big deal, when you were a counselor, that you stepping into, a more of an admin kind of position and being the shield from from legal action in that way? Were there things where you're like, looking back on it, probably wasn't the best move to fill in the blank? Were there things where you're like, okay, if I were to go back in time, knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't be doing it? Because I think about this frequently. I'll give you an example. We are the when I was a camper, the slip and slide that we went on, it was like just like like thinner kind of like plastic. And it was pretty easy for it to get torn and replaced and stuff. And like over time they moved to like, all right, we have a designated like actual slip and slide. We have like a really good hill for it, and it's like really good um, material. And we like lay down like old carpet underneath so that there's no like rocks sticking up or anything like that. But were there like improvements that were just like objectively like, oh, this is so much better and so much safer? I'd love to hear about something like that.
Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, the answer is yes. There like definitely are things
Of
that
course.
in the perspective I'm in now, I'm like, oh, I can't believe that we used to do that. Um, I mean, one thing that comes to mind is when I was a camper, I remember there's this um like spot, kind of it's a like hidden fireplace out in the woods off of camp, and the like trail to get there has ropes running between trees, so you can do it like blindfolded or in the dark and just have people following the ropes out to the knoll, which is what we call it. And when I was a camper, I remember like as a teen camper on the last night of the session, like all the teens would go out there and just like have a campfire in the woods and stay up super late, which was so cool as a teen. And we stopped doing it. And when I was like first on staff, I was like, why don't they do that anymore?
Why
That
would
was
we
so
move away
cool.
from that?
And like now I can definitely see like it would feel kind of crazy to me to send all like 60 of our teen campers
Yeah.
with a couple of staff out into the woods in the dark in an area with like not very well defined borders and like
Yeah.
lots of easy
Yeah.
shadows to sneak off into, and also an area where we've had a lot of bear activity the last several summers. Like
Yeah.
I don't know why we were doing like that. It's crazy that we ever did it. Um,
Yeah,
but
no, that I can totally relate to that. Like there were some things where you feel like they are pretty ingrained into what camp is or what camp should be. Like this is just like a part of our culture, but it's kind of a unique thing to get to watch like the the place and the program and camp kind of growing as you are into new roles, into new skills and abilities, and you're also kind of identifying like, all right, this is seems to be a pain point, even if it's how we've always done it. Kind of you can make those changes over time. And um, anything silly or harmless that you could point to and say like, yeah, this should never change. We should always do we should always do this. It's like the Costco like $1.50 hot dog. Like you can pry the $1.50 hot dog from my cold dead hands. What is there something like that? Because that those are some of the intangibles for me that make up what is so
yeah,
special about a summer camp.
this our head nurse hates that this is my $1.50 hot dog. But and like every nurse who has ever worked at our camp hates this activity, but one of our deeply held traditions is capture the mattress, which is capture the flag, except that the flag is a mattress. And like it is most commonly played on a day when it is raining hard but not thundering. So we just like cancel whatever the morning's activities were and have camp wide capture the mattress in the pouring rain, which is, of course, like when we see the most like scraped knees and twisted ankles and um, all sorts of injuries that come from running and like running carrying a mattress with people chasing you in the rain. But I over my
Yeah.
dead body are we
Yeah,
celebrating really well.
I'm with you on that one. I would you couldn't get that out of me, in a torture chamber. Yeah, that one that one's staying forever. I could feel that. Um, no, it's so funny to kinda seeing those things change. Did you ever see a tradition, kind of, uh, become concrete in real time? Um 'Cause there were things that I either my coworkers, like, did, or even things that I did that I found myself, like, coming back to, and I was like, "Oh, wow, this is, like, still around." Were there things that you did, or someone that you worked closely with did that, like, somehow stuck, and you're like, "This is cool that we were a part of that."
Yeah, it like, so many. I once heard someone, like a camp person, talking about camp in general, say that, like, there's no one who is more insistent on tradition than someone who's at camp for their 2nd year, um, because, like, you go to camp for the first time, you love it, and then in the next year, you're like, "Okay, this is how we always do things," the one time that you've done it,
Yeah.
um, and so I think, like, that's a cool thing about camp is that, like, there are traditions that get really deeply rooted and stick around for decades, but then also it only really takes like a year or two to create a new deeply rooted tradition. And
Yeah.
like after 2 years, half your campers are like, "Yeah, this is how we've always done it every single year that I've been here." Um, one like one specific thing that I can think of that I did is we at the end of every session, we do like a closing ceremony, and we like that morning staff vote on their peers, like on fellow staff, to pick like who will be the fire bringers for the closing ceremony and light the closing ceremony fire. And it's a like the you vote for the people who the person who you think like has really given it their all their that session and been working really hard and growing and just being an awesome counselor, or whatever their role at camp is. And so then the two people who get the most votes are the fire bringers. And like several summers ago, um, one Friday morning, it was like my job to get collect all the firebringer votes, and I like had some time to kill. Was like feeling creative, so took this glass jar and like took colored construction paper and made flames going around it. And I was like, I'm gonna collect the firebringer votes in this, and I'm gonna do it right now. And in like 3 years, everyone's gonna be like, that's the sacred firebringer jar that we always have to use. And it like is still what we use every end of session to collect the firebringer votes. And it was just like a thing I did because I was feeling silly one morning.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's it's so fun how things like that stick, and it's trying to explain it to someone outside of that environment. They're like, "Oh no, that sounds like really sweet," and it's like, "No, no, no, you don't really get it. Like
Yeah.
you don't know how crucial this is to the whole experience." But that's one of the many things that makes it so special, for the kids, for the staff, and um, for the immortality of it all. It's such a cool thing. Um, what resources do you look to for inspiration, self-improvement? Are there, like, conferences that you go to? Are there, books or, like, social media accounts that you follow that you're looking for new things to implement or ways to improve, your own processes?
Yeah, definitely. I last week I was at the American Camp Association's Tri-State Conference in Atlantic City, which is the world's largest gathering of camp professionals every year. It's like 3,000 people from camps, mostly across the Northeast. So that was a really cool. I've been to a couple other camp conferences like that, and so cool to just like be with that many people who are excited about camp and go to all these sessions. And like I got to be there with several members of my leadership team, and so that was cool too to like just see what they were getting out of it. Um, and um, one of the really great benefits of my non-summer job, working in outdoor ed, is that I like spend time at and meet a lot of people who work at other summer camps, because it's very common to like work in outdoor ed fall, spring, and
Right.
then summer camp in the summer. And so that's been a really great resource for me too over the last several years, just to like know all these people who work at all these different camps and be able to talk to them about, like, okay, how are you handling this at your camp? Um, yeah, things like that.
Yeah, it's a cool, like, mirror to hold up to yourself too of like, all right, like, just by way of comparison, we can see, like, are they doing something a little bit better? Are we actually outperforming, in this way? Or like, oh, that's a just good good way to kinda do a pulse check and see where you're at. I love that. Well, I feel like I kinda that sidelined one portion of what you do with outdoor education just 'cause, I care a little bit a bit about summer camp, sue me. But let's talk about, outdoor education. How did you get into that? And talk about, um, like, what was it that drew you in there? Obviously, camp had a huge influence, but, like, let's talk about that.
Yeah, really camp is how I got into it, and, 'cause specifically so I, worked at camp all through college, graduated and worked that summer. I was like, "Okay, this is gonna be my last summer at camp. I'm gonna go get a real job." My degree was in art history, and what I thought I wanted to do was, like, work in the museum world, um, and the, like, first year after I graduated, I moved back in with my parents and was working, just at a bakery while I applied for jobs in the like art world, museum world. There's not a lot of jobs in that sphere, and there's a lot of people competing for very few jobs. So the ones that there are don't pay very well. And as I was kind of going through that process, I like kept what I kept coming back to is like I just want to work at camp forever. I was like, okay, I'll go back and work one more summer at camp, even though I said last summer was my last summer. This one will be my last summer. But like as I approached that summer, just really kept feeling like, no, like this is what I want to keep doing. So, how can I figure out a life that will let me keep doing this? And one of my best friends from camp had been working for the organization that I now work for a couple of years and had been telling me for a while, like, I really think you need to come work with me at Nature's Classroom. And so I applied, and after that summer, like went straight into a fall season working with her, and just so quickly fell in love with it and was like, this is, has so much of what I love about camp while also like challenging me in new ways, and um, never, never really left. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Uh, I like what you said too about there's a lot of overlap. It was a key, influential piece. You're working with a lot of people who have summer camp experience. What specifically were the skills that were honed and sharpened that helped prepare you for, working in this environment?
Um, the biggest thing I think is just like knowing how to work with kids, and the students that we work with are mostly fourth through eighth grade, which is just like an age group that I was really familiar with, from my time at camp, and being able to like be really flexible and adapt to the needs of a completely different group of kids each week, and um, you know ready to adjust the plan based on weather or what's going on with one of your students, and all those things that come up so much at camp
Yeah,
slid right into my work, in outdoor ed. And then kind of the biggest area of growth or like learning for me was, so much of what we do is like camp, but it is also like a little more educational. Their students are coming on a school trip to us. We're teaching like science and ecology, type classes. So really learning how to teach, was a big part of my first few seasons, and also like learning science or like relearning
Yeah,
science that I
okay.
had learned in school, but like it hadn't stuck.
Yeah,
um,
that, I could definitely see how, like, all of those other things, like, really lend to the outdoor education, experience, um, and those are things that you learn and you develop and you grow in a camp environment, obviously, but then, like, the actual material, it's like, "Alright, this is the kinda the key, like, sticking point for me is, like, can I refresh this?" And absolutely. Well, kinda going the opposite direction, has there anything that you've been working on in nature's classroom that has informed your the way that you carry yourself in camp? Because I think there's always something that you can learn and take and apply to in almost any direction. So I'm wondering about how has that impacted the way that you run things at camp.
yeah, there's a lot of things that go in both directions. I think definitely um, like the kind of the content knowledge and the teaching knowledge that I've gotten from my outdoor ed work has helped me to just be more intentional in a lot of camp activities and think about like, okay, like yes, we're just out here having fun, which is the goal of camp, but like how can we also make this like a team building challenge? How are we like helping campers build social skills and um, really learn about how to move through the world by bringing that intentionality, which is something that like camp already has a lot of, but the for me, I've gained a lot more skills with that, um, and I have gained so much nature knowledge from my
Yeah,
outdoor ed work that I bring into camp, um, and it also like has really shaped how I work with staff as well. Like I've had just really great mentors and really great bosses at outdoor classroom that have like helped me to be a better boss at camp, I think.
that's cool. Yeah, I love that. That fully what I expected, but glad to hear it in words that like that. Such a cool thing. Well, I've kind of come to the end of my list of questions here, but thankfully, we have a tradition on the show where each guest asks the next guest a question. So this one comes from Channing Bruce, who was the previous guest. And I like this one a lot for you because you've spent so much time at camp. I'd be interested to know if you could do one other job, for the rest of your life, what would that be? And tell us about that. What do you think? What do you when you think of alternative career options? If you had to, obviously we would never ask you to, but if you were in that situation, what do you think you would kind of find yourself gravitating to?
Um, okay, so like seemingly it's very different from what I do, but I would argue that the like connection with people is very much the same. I worked for 7 years off and on in a bakery, like right down the street from my parents' house. I started as a cashier and then over time moved back towards the ovens and spent a lot of time as a baker there. And I like just really loved that work, and I think if I had to, I could do that for
Mm,
the rest of my life, and I loved, like, how it's a small, locally owned place, really, like, a center of community in a lot of ways, so when I was working there, I was really, like, tuned into what was going on in my community and talking to people all the time, and I just loved the physicality of it too, that, like, I would go in every day and have my list of like, this is what I need to bake today and check it off one by one and then know that there's like all of my neighbors are going home with like cupcakes and cookies and loaves of bread that I made. And that's making their life better. So
yeah,
I do that.
I can totally see the dotted line there. I've always kind of felt that um like summer camps and like hospitality fields like have like this unseen connection of like, if
Yeah.
you're good at this, you probably can transfer this and make this happen. Like there's a presentation about it. There's project management and all of these things, which I don't know. Yeah, no, I totally see it. I'm all in on it. Excellent. Well, what question would you like to ask to whoever comes next?
I'm gonna go with one of my favorite camp icebreaker questions, which is if you could have anything other than hair growing out of your head, what would it be and why?
Oh man. Have you ever had just like somebody come back to you with an answer for that like really floored you?
Um, I'm sure I have in the moment, but I've, like, asked this to so many people that I can't think of specifics right now.
That's good. I like that one. I think that I've said it on the show before, but because of camp, it's one of my favorite like things to think about is like a good like conversation starter like question like that. Um, it's yeah, so fun to sit there and like at like even on like a week to week basis, if you've got like a new set of kids, like asking the same question and see how they respond differently and
Yeah,
stuff like that. It's like it's there's such power in like a good question like that, and
yeah.
that's what we love. Nice. I'm excited to ask that one. What do you have an answer for that?
I, like, switch it up from time to time. I often say spaghetti, because you get the, like,
Spaghetti's
look of hair while also having but, like, not dry spaghetti, specifically, like, hot
yeah.
buttered spaghetti.
Mhm.
Great one of my favorite snacks is just, like, one of my comfort meals is just pasta with butter, so
Yeah.
you have that right there. Sometimes I say, like, moss or,
Moss is
like,
good.
yeah, something soft like
I
that.
like that. I think if I were to go the pasta answer, you could go with like a lasagna like mohawk would be kind of fun. Um, yeah, I like
Would
moss.
it just be the pasta, or would it be, like, lasagna with the sauce and the cheese and everything in it?
I think if it's a full head of hair, then the mix-ins are have gotta be in it, but if it's, like, just the one streak, like, just the mohawk, then I think it's just the one noodle.
Yeah.
But that's just my best guess. I wouldn't know for sure until I was actually in that situation. Yeah, that's good. Well, Nora, I've run out of questions from myself and from previous guests, so, I wanna give you the opportunity. If do you have any closing thoughts, statements, pieces of advice you'd like to offer up before we close it down for the episode?
I think a piece of advice that I got when I was, like, 22, just out of college, like, applying to jobs in what the field I thought I wanted to be in, but, like, not sure what I really wanted to do, was my aunt at one point said to me, like, "You don't need a career right now, you just need a job." And something I've, like that's something I really internalized and, like, reinforced both as I've kinda shaped my own career over the last decade and, like, seen the people around me doing that too with their careers is, like, a career is what happens when you put a bunch of jobs together, but, like, you don't need to decide what your career is, and, like, you can't actually decide what your career is at the beginning of it. You just find the job that's right for you then, and it goes from there.
Absolutely. As a I can really appreciate that because I feel like outdoor professionals are constantly pressured to like, "Okay, well, like, what are you gonna do after
Yeah.
this?" Or like, "What are you gonna do when the season
When are you
ends?"
gonna
Like,
get a real job?
it's a gonna go get a real job. Like, yeah, I think it's an especially prevalent conversation for people who work in camps and other, adjacent fields. Um, so yeah, I think great piece of advice there. Well, if you've made it this far in the episode, comment a spaghetti or noodle emoji in the comments. That would be great to let us know that you made it this far. Um, and we'll catch you in the next one. The big thank you to Nora for coming on. We'll see you guys around.
Thank you.